the bridge. It's kind of a diplomatic thing. I don't want to. He just kind of insisted, or
Yeah, he talked to me on the weekend as well. I met him at a demonstration. And the thing is, it is basically much better to speak in English.
Okay, then let's do it in English, and yeah, let's do it in English.
Very good. I'm actually ready. If you're ready, we can start with recording.
I'm ready whenever you want.
Perfect. This is the Günther Fehlinger podcast. We are now back from the Munich Security Conference, and on Monday already we start again with our tour of all Europe to discuss from Bulgaria to Romania to Portugal about the situation of the public support for the Iranians, for the Ukrainians, and for general issues about these countries. Today, I'm very honored that I have a representative from this beautiful country of Portugal. I'm very lucky that I have been several times in that beautiful country, never to Porto, but I have been to Lisbon and in the south, in the Algarve. And when I see the winter here in Austria, I really miss this beautiful country. And you, Thomas, have the privilege to live all your life in that beautiful country. So lucky you, we can say that.
Correct. Well, I lived 1 year in Madrid. Other than that, I always lived here in Portugal. Unfortunately, right now we have a lot of rain. So it has been raining,
I'm sorry.
really big floods, actually. And, the highway was closed. It's still closed because basically the highway fell down. So big floods, and a lot of people lost electricity. So that's really on the news every day now for almost 3-4 weeks. So it's really a kind of a unique winter in that context. And we still have some people without electricity. We had, I think, 140,000 people without electricity. Now it's only 20,000 2 days ago. They had still no electricity. So that's what you see on the breaking news 24 hours, basically. Yeah.
I'm very sorry for the people of Portugal. You are very exposed to the Atlantic storms in the winter. Do you have that every year, or is it just a freak storm this winter?
Well, the winter used to be, when I was a kid, very rainy. It still is, but this rain, it rained almost since October. It has been raining, I wouldn't say every day, and it has rained a lot in a few hours. And well, worse than the rain was actually a big storm we had, which we don't really are used to having storm 150 or 60 kilometers an hour. And that destroyed in the center of the country, 100 kilometers north of Lisbon, pretty much a lot of houses. So that was really, and electricity infrastructure. So you still have the cables over the air, and that destroyed pretty much a big part, and that made it so destructive, so to say. Apart from the floats, we always had floats. That's the part of with the dams, it's easier to control, but nevertheless, we had more rain than in previous years. But actually, for the people living in the center of the country, that has been the worst. Has been this big storm, which destroyed all the roofs and houses and electricity infrastructure. So everyone is helping, and a lot of volunteers are helping. The mayors are in charge of that, the central government, but still a lot to go. Still a long road to go. Yeah.
And in your area, your city where you live is very problematic, or?
In Porto, no. Well, we had the river, the Douro River level was higher than normal. So every couple of years, if not every year, it almost reaches. It did not reach, but it almost reached the city, so to say. But in the inland, it did, which is a more sensitive place. But it wasn't definitely not as severe as in Coimbra, the university city, the beautiful university city of Coimbra. That was very bad. Last week, a couple of days ago, that it really reached the level of the city, and then there was a break of a sort of a dam, which then affected also the highway, closing the highway. Now we have an alternative highway between the main cities Porto and Lisbon, and that worked. And also TAP, the fly company, the Portuguese fly company, is also making extra flights. But well, it's still a lot to go. But now, unfortunately, they were saying this morning that the weather is going to be so less rain. So and apparently spring is going to arrive. With spring, the tourists arrive. That's something extremely important for our economy. Extremely important. Well, I'm a tour guide, so that's my that's my job. So for me as well as a freelance, but definitely, yeah. So we look forward for the bad weather, for the good weather, now. Yeah.
When we had 1.5 years ago a freak storm and a flooding in Austria, first time since 20 years, a really very heavy flooding in September 2024. It was very hard and a lot of parts of our country flooded. We also asked for European solidarity, and there was then some reconstruction efforts and funding from the European Union. Will it be the same in the case of the floods and the winter storm in Portugal?
Yes, the Portuguese government asked for support for the European Union, and we will get that support. A lot of people do have insurance too, so those insurance, it is still, trying to look at what happened and to evaluate everything. We have a lot of people don't have insurance, but for those people, the government is also supporting them financially, and they're thinking about doing now a big financial, support for the people that were affected. We have a lot of companies also affected. So economists are already saying this will affect the economy growth of this year. So that's also something which is negative, of course. But I would say the main concern are still the people that are without houses that need to recover their houses. But yes, the European Union is supporting the central government asked for support and
So I
are
wish
being
the
supported.
people of the concerned areas all the best and also speedy recovery. And I hope the compensation will be good because we had many problems with the compensation and still people have lost a lot of savings and had to rebuild their houses. And it was very difficult, big setback financially, emotionally, of course, when your house is flooded. I feel with the people of Portugal.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thomas, tell me about yourself. You say you work as a tour guide, but if I understand you're also active and you hope for a very good tourism season in 2026. And I'm sure a lot of tourists will come to your beautiful country because you are blessed by God. You have a fantastic country. But tell me about your political background because you're also active as a political individual.
Correct. Basically, I never had political activity until 2000 and I think 2017. Initiativa Liberal, which is the liberal Portuguese party, was founded, and pretty soon I joined the party. I lived in the Greater Lisbon area for 18 years. When I came back to Porto, I joined. Well, not only joined, I started, being a little bit active on Iniciativa Liberal Porto. So Porto is the second city of the country, and I'm part of the group responsible for the city of Porto. And in this context,
Tell me about this party. What is it? Is it like in which European party family is it?
it's the Iniciativa Liberal is the Liberal Party. So basically, we're in favor for less bureaucracy. That's one of the big challenges we have for Portugal. We believe in the free market. We also believe that the individual needs to have or has the right to have more rights, and so less be it the state deciding for your life, and more be it the individual to decide what you want, what for your life. So this is the main guidelines of Iniciativa Liberal. We have 8 members in the parliament, so we have been consistent, but we are not a populist party, which so we try to do the right thing. We are now also here in the city of Porto. We are together with the Social Democrat Party. So the mayor is from the Social Democrat Party. The last elections, which took place in October. So we are together also in the management of the city. So we have 2 members in the board of the city, in the city council. And so this is it's a new experience for us too, but it's been challenging, but it's been it's been positive.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I understand the Social Democratic Party in Portugal is a center right-wing party, and you have our left-wing party, which is called differently. I just try to remember because
We
the
have
terms are always very confusing in European party politics. So
mm,
just from my time as in the EPP students and youth movement, I remember that this former president of yours, let me get the names right. It was Mr. Barroso was the commission president. He was also
correct.
from the Social Democrats, if I'm correct. Yeah.
That's correct.
There was Rebelo de Sousa. He was the president until recently, and he was also for the Social Democrats. But this
Correct.
Social Democratic terms is basically the name for the European People's Party, center right-wing party in your country. Is this correct?
That is correct. That is correct. Well, basically, we are a democracy since 1974. Since 1974, we had always the Social Democrat Party, which are in power now, with a minority, so they don't have a majority in the parliament, and or the Socialist Party. So they always keep on changing since 1974. For the first time, we have now the second most voted party was not the Socialist Party. It was the Chega Party, which is a populist right-wing party, and that's something new. Like in many other European countries, that's something new. We had also the recently, as you mentioned, we did have the elections for the president. And now we have a new president. So Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa, he's leaving in March, and the new president is from the Socialist Party, António José Seguro. So you hear about him.
When I was young, I met Rebelo de Sousa several times in Brussels. It's 20 years ago. And I remember him always to be a very charming, very polite, very entertaining, and very big intellectual person. I liked him very much. What's his reputation in Portugal?
Well, he is very charming. He's very friendly. He's very human on a daily basis. If you meet him, so I would say that the half of the country has a selfie with him. So he's very popular in this sense. But I would say that for many people, he interferes too much. He's always speaking. He speaks too much, and a president should maybe be a bit more, more conservative, only speaking, that his words matter. And sometimes most people would agree that he speaks too much, and that's something, you speak too much and you tend to make mistakes, or you become a little bit too irrelevant, and that's So he's not someone willing to risk in political terms, which is understandable on one side, but on the other side. So I think people, we had him for 10 years now. So he made 2 terms, like most presidents usually do in Portugal. But I think we are also pleased that, well, okay, that's enough probably.
We know that feeling that for politicians, normally it's quite good after 10 years to go. And he had anyhow a lifelong in politics. So all the best for Marcelo Rebelo with his wonderful name. And I think him a happy retirement. That is very good. Now the new president, he's then from the Socialist Party. That's the center left-wing party. What's the kind of president he will be, basically? Tell me.
He's from the Socialist Party. So the interesting thing about the elections, we had almost, I think it was 8 candidates on the first round. And by Portuguese law, the constitution, the president needs to have more than 50% of the votes, meaning we had a second round. And the socialist António José Seguro passed to the second round, as well as André Ventura from the populist right-wing party. And then basically, everyone that came out saying who they would vote at the second round, even conservatives did mention they would vote for for the socialist António José Seguro. So they mentioned that because, well, they don't identify themselves basically with André Ventura as a populist party, kind of, blaming very often immigrants, kind of. And this made it that the socialist António José Seguro became now the president of Portugal. He's a kind of we don't see him. He's a kind of a person might be willing to make bridges. One of the first statements was, "I want this. I want the government to make it to the end." So the president, on a daily basis in Portugal, he does not have a lot of power. He needs to sign the laws. He might do a political veto. He might also absolve the parliament. That's a so-called political atomic bomb. That's when he has a lot of power. We had a negative experience with a previous socialist president, Jorge Sampaio. Well, he passed away already, but at a certain point he absolved the parliament. Nevertheless, we had a majority in the parliament. So, and the outcome was we had elections. The Socialist Party won the elections, which was José Sócrates. José Sócrates was prime minister for several years in Portugal, but he kind of left Portugal in a mess. Well, we had a bankrupt. Portugal went bankrupt with him as a prime minister, and now he's having problems with the law, apparently with corruption. So this legal process is still being taken to court.
That
So
was 10 years ago during the financial crisis when he was the prime minister.
Correct, yes.
And
And
he's
so many
called in
people,
English, we would more, for the audience to understand, he's called more Socrates. And you Portuguese, you pronounce it Socrates or something. So nobody can understand you, unfortunately. So in English written, it's more like this Greek philosopher. And that's basically
yes,
the name of
José
this
Sócrates.
gentleman who was leading Portugal into bankruptcy.
So my point is a lot of people don't like the idea. Even the people that voted for José Seguro are afraid because he's a socialist that he might, he might dissolve the parliament again. Not now, but and we didn't have good memories about the previous socialist president, and also about José Sócrates, definitely.
Tell me, what's basically the nature of the beast when it comes to this Chega party? Is it a pro-Russian party? Is it a populist party? What's the nature of this populist party you have? We don't know
Well,
very much about it in Central Europe. We know AfD, we now know our FPÖ in Austria, and these are basically pro-Russian parties who are traitors and also xenophobic party, anti-immigrant, of course. But what is the nature of this Chega party in your case in Portugal?
Well, Chega party is a one-man party. So André Ventura is the president of this party, and he was also the candidate now. So he won 30% of the votes he had on the second round against António José Seguro. So that he received 30% of the votes. So,
but in the run-up, he had 30%.
In the second round.
That's
So
not
he
very much
was
because normally in the run-up you have 45, 47. Normally these run-ups are very close. So if he
correct.
gets only 35, he doesn't have a lot of support in the electorate, actually.
That's correct. He does not have. He considers himself, he's responsible, or he is the representative of the right side of the parliament. But with the votes, actually, what you're just saying confirmed he's not the representative of the conservatives, because many of the conservatives didn't want him, so they voted for the socialist António José Seguro. Well, it's a one-man party. Very much so. He is a political. He has very good political intuition, but he's a populist. He says something one day, the next day he might say something different. So he's, as a matter of fact, he's in certain aspects he's kind of a socialist. in the sense he's in favor to maintain TAP, the Portuguese company, flying company, which belongs to the state. He's in favor of maintaining it in the hands of the state. Nevertheless, it had a lot of financial problems in the past. So the Portuguese put already, I think, 5,000 million euros into the
Oh.
flying
That
company.
wouldn't be allowed in the European Union to subsidize the airline so much.
Well, it was done definitely, and they are in favor of they're against the tolls. They are in many aspects they are kind of socialists, but they are also very the political rhetoric is very aggressive. Very often in terms of blaming immigrants. They made some advertising, and then the court said it was illegal. They had to remove that advertisement. So it kind of always looking for an enemy. So they put a part of the Portuguese against the other part of the Portuguese, and that is definitely not. That's not positive. Definitely. Concerning
Portugal is such a mixed society with such a huge global heritage. You became world famous now when Mr. Costa, who is our common president as EU Council president, he went to India to sign this famous free trade agreement with India, and he put out his Goa India residence card as a whatever global Indian. And it was a big success actually for our advertisement in India, basically. Thanks a lot for Mr. Costa, by the way. You can talk about him in a moment. But in general, you are such a diverse society with a global reach. How can you be anti-immigrant in Portugal? It's very confusing for me.
Well, we did. Well, Mr. Costa, he was for 6 years. He was our prime minister, and we do need reforms. That's one of the things that Iniciativa Liberal is also betting and defending on a daily basis in the parliament. Reforms in the educational system, reforms in the social system as such, in the social security, in the health system. And Mr. Costa, he had the opportunity during these 6 years doing reforms, and he did not. He's not. It's not his. It's not his style or capacity. He was part. He governed with the Communist Party and with the left-wing radical party Bloco de Esquerda. So he didn't leave. Many people don't like Mr. Costa in the sense that he did not do the reforms that we had and we still have necessary. And right now the Social Democrats Party are not doing those reforms either, in the sense that they need the support of the Socialist Party or of the right-wing populist Chega Party.
What do you think about Mr. Costa as EU Council president? He is very popular in Portugal.
I think the Portuguese are always pleased to have a Portuguese representative as a small country with 10.5 million inhabitants, and a small country within the European Union. So most Portuguese are proud and are happy. And there is overall a general agreement that if a Portuguese is representing, in this case, Europe, but if a Portuguese is successful in outside Portugal, that he has the support for the majority of the party. So I would say
Mr. Barroso very much. Barroso was a really great Commission president.
He was, but he left Portugal to become the president of the Commission, and that left it that we had then, and the next prime minister was still from the social Democrat Party. But after that, that's when we had the dissolution of the parliament. So at the end, it ended up happening that the socialists came to the power with José Sócrates. So
it was good for Barroso and Europe, but very bad for Portugal. I'm very sorry, but we needed a guy because he was very pro-American, pro-reform, and actually a very good Commission president.
Yes, Yes. So I think most people then, like that part of him as a representative of Portugal, definitely. Yeah.
Let me ask you about migration because it's a big topic, I understand, everywhere in Europe. And in Spain, your neighboring country, Mr. Sanchez, the socialist, is now putting 500,000 people without papers to get papers. It's a big thing in Europe. And we want to understand if you in Portugal will do the same, what you think about this policy. Do you discuss Spanish policies in Portugal as well? Or are you simply ignore the Spanish, or what is your attitude towards Spain?
Well, overall, if there's a news in Spain, it's news in Portugal. It's our only neighbor. We have the sea and we have Spain as a neighbor. We have, overall very good relations. Portuguese, Spanish have very good relations amongst themselves. We have similar cultures. So it was news. It was news in Portugal. It was definitely news in Portugal. Coming back to the part of the immigrants, we do need immigrants in Portugal. There's no question about it. We have I think it's between 45% of agriculture and fishing is dependent on immigrants. So without immigrants, tourism needs immigrants. So tourism is, it's like 70% of what we export, and we do need immigrants. Having said that, during the time Antonio Costa was prime minister, he also opened the borders in Portugal, and we had 500,000 people. I think it was 1.5 million people coming in to Portugal, also without control. Many of those
1.5 million is a lot for 9 million country.
Well, no, for several years. I think since 2021, I think it was, and many of those moved throughout Europe. The point is, a lot of people came in without control, so they only had to sign kind of a declaration. Okay, I promised to search for a job. So there was a lot of people coming in without control. So that was, and then in the meanwhile, we had the identity responsible for controlling the immigrants. They closed that, opened a new one, but they closed it first without opening the new one. So it took too long to open the new one with a lot of problems. And then meanwhile, we had so many people trying to be, to legalize themselves to work here. And initially, right now, I would say most parties agree that it needs to be addressed, because suddenly we always had immigrants. Okay, so we always had immigrants mainly from the former colonies, from Angola, the African colonies, former colonies, Angola, Mozambique, maybe South and maybe Prince, Cape Verde. We always had them. They always integrated well. We never had issues with those people. They integrated well. They speak similar culture. They speak Portuguese. The majority of immigrants we have are Brazilians. They integrate well. They mix with the Portuguese. And now more recently, also with this opening of the borders, which is now being addressed by the Social Democrat Party, with the opening, you had a lot of people coming from, India, Bangladesh, from different places. And those people, they have more difficulties in integrating into Portugal. Many of them, they only speak English, even if they're here 1 year later, 2 years later, and that makes the integration process much more difficult. So the good thing, I would say, is part of those many people that came in, some of them moved within Europe, and right now the present government is addressing this issue, trying to, it's much more difficult once the people are in the country, try to regularize and put everything into on the right way.
In Spain, in the debate, they were telling in the media in Austria yesterday that most of the Spanish immigrants are basically from Colombia, Venezuela, from Mexico, and basically they are culturally so close to the Spanish culture that their integration is relatively frictionless ultimately. And they are from the same religion and the same cultural heritage, basically all coming from Spanish migrants who went to South America several centuries before, and now some of them coming back. In the case of Portugal, isn't it the same that most of your migration is coming from your former colonies, where you are basically had one of the most Europeans have forgotten, but you had one of the biggest colonial empires in the world until 1975. Basically, you were running huge stretches of Africa, and of course, your cultural ties with and linguistic ties with Brazil make you somehow part of this global, you call it Lusophonia community, the global speakers of Portuguese, which is a huge community worldwide. And most of them
Yeah,
are from this. How many percentage of your migrants in that sense are from the Portuguese speaking world?
the majority of immigrants are Brazilians. And most of them, we don't have any issues. They integrate well. They mix with the Portuguese. The culture is very similar. If we would consider, our cousins are the Brazilians. Probably, maybe you could compare it like Austrians and Germans in some sense. So yeah, of course, with the opening of the borders without control, I put it this way, with Antonio Costa, you had also you had some mafias coming in because suddenly they know there's no control, so they come in, Brazilian mafias, so which suddenly crime hasn't raised, but the violence, more violent crimes has raised. So we have some changes, and of course, parties like Chega use this as a blaming immigrants, and that's a challenge also to try to help them integrate. So we still had, again, with the majority of immigrants are still from Brazil. But for instance, even now with the floats and the reconstruction of houses that are necessary, we do need immigrants. We don't have people enough to build. This is one of the big challenges in Portugal. Is also the prices of real estate. So you would have to build more, more houses. Basically, the state also, kind of a lot of taxes are put, or the state maintains a lot of taxes. If you build a house, a big percentage of what you pay with license, with bureaucracy and taxes is for the state. So the state is responsible. This is one of the things that Initiative Liberal is defending as well. That that you make remove bureaucracy, make it easier to build, make it more cheaper to build, make life easier for businessmen, the ones who are building, because that's what we need basically. But of course, coming the immigrants in, which we need them again, also the price of houses, they need to live somewhere as well. So there are other issues linked
But
to
don't
that.
you make a difference? As Portuguese, you have a 300 years history with Brazil. And the possibility to make the difference physically between Portuguese and a Brazilian is really very difficult from the side of Austria, if I may say so. So you look very similar, you are very similar, you speak very similar. Do you really call the Brazilian immigrants and migrants in Portugal in your conception?
We do, but it's a different pronunciation. It's a different. The Portuguese is a different pronunciation, but yeah, it's again. I think many Portuguese consider them like the cousins because most people. Well, I have a Brazilian cousin. Really have actually cousins, but having said, the cultural is similar, and we had a lot of Portuguese that in the past, in the 1920s, for instance, they immigrated to Brazil. In the 1800s, they immigrated to Brazil. So we still consider them immigrants, but this does not have a negative connotation at all. It is what it is. But again, they most of them integrate very well, and yeah. So
Let me ask you about your policy towards Mercosur, because we had now a big debate in Austria about Austria opposing the free trade agreement with the Mercosur, with Brazil basically and Argentina. And was Portugal in favor of a free trade agreement with Mercosur? And what's your relation with Brazil today, basically?
So Portugal was in favor for Mercosur. Nevertheless, well, there was a debate. There was a debate. Schirger, for instance, was kind of more reluctant towards Mercosur. There's a belief that for Portuguese wines, which is extremely important for Portugal, that Mercosur will benefit, for instance, the wines being exported to South America. I think we are the sixth or seventh biggest wine producer worldwide, not in revenue, but in quantity. So it is important for the Portuguese trade. But it wasn't, there was no big debate in the sense that there was a kind of aggressive and that you had to really very strong debate against Mercosur. So I would say the country overall is in favor for Mercosur. Yeah. So Brazil is also one of the places most Portuguese, if they can afford to travel, they will on their holidays they will travel to Brazil. So Brazil is always something linked also in the Portuguese culture to our culture.
And now let's talk a little bit about global politics, because I want to know how Portugal is standing towards the liberation of the Iranians to Ukraine, because Portugal historically is always seen as a pro-Western country in the Iberian Peninsula. You were always a British ally. You came to NATO in the beginning from the start on, and the Spanish came so late, and all these things. And now also in comparison to Brazil, because Brazil is a big problem, is in BRICS and is standing with Putin, is not to deliver any weapons. And the hope of pro-Ukrainians in Austria, like me, is that the Portuguese and you will somehow help me to break Brazil out of BRICS. And how we can achieve this magic plot.
That will be difficult. I think that will be difficult. I think there's kind of an agreement, or I think the Portuguese authorities always have a diplomacy of friendship, and always have been, I would say, conservative in terms of diplomacy worldwide, and this and this applies also to Brazil. Brazil
Thomas,
are
let's talk it step by step. First of all, what's your opinion about Ukraine? What is Portugal doing for Ukraine? Are you delivering weapons? Are you supporting Ukraine's freedom? What's your position on Ukraine?
the position of Portugal overall is very much on the side of Ukraine. Even Schirger is not doing, is not defending Putin. Let's put it this way. So that's actually something which is So I think with a exception of the Communist Party, we still have three members of the parliament from the Communist Party, and they are the only ones which are, they state they are against, they want freedom. That's what they say. But if there's something about defending or voted in the parliament, they always vote against the interests of Ukraine. So overall, Portugal, I would say, I would risk that the big majority, I would guess more than 90% of the Portuguese are with Ukraine. So there was a lot of help also at the beginning of the war, sending, nevertheless, we are at the end of Europe, sending whatever stuff they needed in Ukraine to Ukraine. So that is happening. Working with the communities, with also immigrants coming to Portugal, not as much as in other neighboring countries of Ukraine, of course. But there was also a plan to help them integrate within Portugal. By the way, we had also immigrants coming from Ukraine in the 1990s. And overall, they always integrated very well. It's very interesting. Nevertheless, the language is completely different. After 1 year or two, they already speak reasonably Portuguese, which helps the integration process. It's a different culture, definitely, but
Obrigado, I can say my main word in Portuguese.
And so Portugal overall is with Ukraine, and will continue being with Ukraine. And
Thank you very much. Your parliamentarians vote for the 90 billion euro loan package for Ukraine now last week?
I'm not sure what the
Okay, no matter, but did you send, it was passed anyhow, and some of that's always the big parameter. If somebody is for Ukraine or not, you can look in the European Parliament voting records. I think they will be online available easily, and you can
Mm.
always see who is really a friend because we just in December decided for 90 billion euros to be basically given to Ukraine because it will be only repayable when the Russians pay some reparations. So basically, it's a donation for Ukraine to keep Ukraine in the fight. And last week there was this vote in the Parliament, in the European Parliament. You can look up and see who is really a friend. He has voted yes. Who is an enemy has voted against, and somehow
Mhm.
abstained. So that's very important. Let me ask you about the weapons. Did Portugal also transfer some weapons and ammunition to Ukraine?
Yes, there are some how do you call these flying new devices, the
Drones.
drones. There's one company producing drones, and they are being sold to Ukraine. This was in the news yesterday, the day before, and that's something which is being done. Well, there are some voluntarily people doing like on weekends drones, which it's a small help, but yeah, I know people that participated in those as well. It's done by the Ukrainian community, but it was open to everyone, and I know people that participated in this kind of support. I know some Portuguese. I know one specifically, a friend of mine. He's also helping, and all helping for the Ukraine cause. I know he went with trucks many, many, many times to Ukraine, from Portugal to Ukraine,
That's a
and
long way.
it's a
That's
long way. It's a
really
long.
about 4,000 kilometers or something.
Yeah, so it's probably the country which is the most far away within Europe, I suppose. I don't know, but yeah. So I would say only also on TV. What you see on TV, basically, it's you have a lot of. In Portugal, we have, of course, the news, but we always have people making political comment and experts, generals making their opinion, what's happening in the war, and so on and so forth. And I would say the big majority all in favor for Ukraine. So there's a kind of a
So the
strong
Portuguese
message.
are really a pro-Western bulwark, a pillar of pro-Westernism in the European Union. I want to thank you for that. We were always with the West. Bravo
We
for
always correct. I agree completely with what you're saying. It is, and we are also we see ourselves as an Atlantic country in the sense that we have a Soros military base. We have the Soros Islands, so we kind of are also have a geostrategic place within Europe, but also in the context in the relations with the United States of America. Yeah.
Very good. Let me ask you what you think about Austrian neutrality, because we in Austria are neutral. We don't deliver any weapons and we pay nothing for Ukraine and we are very immoral and anti-solidarity people. Do you think that's good, or should the Austrians join NATO like Sweden or Finland? Or are you such a diplomatic politician who says, oh, that's up to the Austrian people? Or are you a
No,
leader
I
who
think
says Austria is wrong?
No, I think. Well, I'm not an Austrian. I don't know Austria that well. But having said that, I think I would like to see my Austrian friends to join NATO and and be part of this European project. At the end of the day, we are all kind of the relation with Russia. What will happen with Ukraine and Russia has an influence, even a country as Portugal, because nevertheless, we are geographically at the end of Europe, the country posted the most far away. We are very much aware that the risk for other European countries is a risk for Portugal as well. So I would think that Austrians might make that thought as well. So definitely, I think that I would welcome to see Austria being part of NATO and being part of participating and helping and of this so important project in these days we live.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. I agree very much because I'm campaigning for Austria joining NATO, so it's not a surprise. But I think it's also for all other Europeans very unacceptable for some countries like Malta, Ireland, Cyprus to stand aside, while even the Portuguese, who are for sure safe and fine away, far away are doing so much for Ukraine. And you are a very international country, and you know how it is to fight for freedom because you were under a dictatorship until 1974 or 5, I think. You
Correct.
for, and you made your revolution, you were fighting for freedom, and you always have a passion for other people who fight for freedom. As I understand, you're also an activist for the freedom of the Iranians. How is that going in Portugal?
Definitely. This was 2002 was the first time, when they killed that Magdalena Maza in 2022. So there was big demonstrations in Portugal. So we had a lot of people participating in those demonstrations. There was a lot of media coverage as well. And now again, I think this is it was, if you there, we don't know the exact figures, but between 8th and 9th of January, I think there's kind of an agreement that 30,000 people were massacred at least, but some people speak about being maybe 100,000. We don't know.
In
And
Austria,
that's
our political leaders have the information it's about 90,000 dead Iranians in
I
January.
figure too. So in 2 days, and then you have still the people that were made prisoners. You had the people that were tortured. You have kids that disappeared. You have women that disappeared. They talk about violation. They talk about people having to pay for the death, to recover the death, and to pay per bullet that was put by the guardians, by the Iranian radical guardians. So it's like a nightmare. It's like a nightmare. And the big concern. Well, we had demonstrations in Porto and Lisbon. So 3 times we had this big action on last Saturday here in Porto. We have,
You
I think,
participated in the Global Day for Freedom for Iran on the 14th, last Saturday.
yes, yes. We participated. Initiative Liberal, I think it was, well, here in Porto was the only party. I think in Lisbon it was also the only party. I don't want to say anything wrong, but and in Porto we had around, at a certain point, I think we had almost between 350 to 500 people. So, a lot of Iranians, a very peaceful demonstration. And I think those people are an example, are an inspiration for us. One of the concerns I have is that there seems to be a kind of, you don't see, there were demonstrations all over the world. In the United States of America, around 500,000 people demonstrated. In Munich, you had 200 or 250,000 people demonstrating. So it was a huge event. And here in the news, it's almost ignored. Well, we had the national television; they were present at the demonstration here in Porto. So it was on TV, and that was, of course, positive. But there seems to be a kind of I wouldn't say censorship, but it's omitted this, and this is something which is of major concern. I think it's changing. It will change because truth always comes up, and it will come up. Even if they try to hide it. So yeah. Anyhow, Iniciativa Liberal is always, we are in contact with the Iranian community in Porto and Lisbon, where the two big cities where the demonstrations take place. And we'll continue supporting them. So Initiative Liberal is always, in defending freedom wherever it's necessary, be it in Cuba, in Venezuela, in Ukraine, in Iran as well. So we will continue being in contact with our Iranian friends, and as far as it is possible, to support them as far as it is possible. Because even living here in Portugal, they are afraid, about exposing themselves. They're afraid about what might happen to their relatives back in Iran. They're afraid if one day they want to go to Iran, some of them they cannot go back to Iran. So it's something. So yeah, let's see what happens in this context.
I remember, Thomas, it was in 2003. Barroso, as your prime minister, was one of the few European leaders who stood with the Americans to liberate Iraq. And I want to thank you for that. This was the right position to take. And now again, the Portuguese are absolutely, I understand, for the freedom of Iran, and that's the right position to take at the moment. What do you think? Will the public and the institutions in Portugal endorse freedom of Iran when it now comes to the military intervention? As I understand, the big American aircraft carrier group Ford is now over the Atlantic and will very soon, I guess, it will pass via Portugal and go to the waters around Israel and be in striking distance to liberate Iran. That will happen in the next week. And then next weekend, the Americans will have assembled enough forces to liberate Iran. Most likely, this will happen according to my information. And then the question is, where will the Europeans stand? And my question is, where will Portugal stand? With the liberation or against it?
Think when it happens, Portugal will be in favor for the liberation when it happens. For
For a
now,
good country.
for now, probably will be silence for now, just to see what will happen with the president. Yeah, with Donald Trump, you never know. He says something, he says something else. So we
That's
never
true.
know exactly. So it's always so probably silence for now. But I think the Portuguese will probably support once it happens. It's they made 400 terrorist attacks worldwide in these 47 years. Apart from the population, the suffering of the population, and the population is made prisoners, and it seems that the big majority is completely against this theocratical Islamic tremendous awful dictatorship. So I think it's a risk for the Middle East, for the world, but of course it's also a big challenge. So it's not as easy as make a change like in Venezuela. It's a
That was
complete
very good.
different.
Did your elite and your people approve of the end of the tyrant Maduro? Because I was very much in favor, but the Austrian politicians always claimed that is against human rights and against international law to kidnap that terrible person. But I was so happy about it. What was the Portuguese public reception of regime
The
change
public the
in
public overall the public overall were thought were okay with that, and approved it. I would say approved it, because there are a lot of relations between Portugal and Venezuela. Because in the past, still during the times of the dictatorship, or after that even, we had a lot of immigrants. When Venezuela was, people immigrated. The Portuguese are immigrants, by the way. Also, all their life they immigrated to France, to Germany, to Switzerland.
Belgium? I know a lot of Portuguese in Belgium when I lived there. Very nice people. Best regards to everybody who's watching.
In
And
Luxembourg as
Luxembourg.
well. Luxembourg has a huge.
Luxembourg is, I think, 30% of the people there are Portuguese. Somehow like
So the point is, we have a lot of people a lot of Portuguese in Venezuela. So that's one of the concerns of the Portuguese governments as well, is the Portuguese in Venezuela. So yeah, the majority are definitely in favor, apart from the Communist Party, but they always against. There's no expectation that that will change.
there are
But
also some communists here, don't worry. And they're
yeah,
at the
they're
same
becoming
level.
more. They still have 3 members of the parliament. So yeah, but
Terrible.
they're losing. They're losing votes on every election. That's a good thing.
Thomas, tell me about why is it so different, Portugal and Spain? Because that's really very surprising. Let me give you the example. Spain, for example, after September and October 7, now the Israeli terror attack, when the Hamas attacked the Israelis in 2023, Spain and Ireland, neutral Ireland, have been the leaders of the Palestinian cause in the global arena, basically. And Spain has really been very, very bad to Israel all the time under socialist Sanchez. And this was very outrageous for me. Portugal seems to have a very different position. So explain me a little bit on all these global affairs. You are the good guys and the Spanish are the bad guys. Why is that? Why are you so reasonable and why are the Spanish always on the wrong side of history?
Well, I think Portugal has always been, again, a diplomacy of friendship, I would say. But I think Spain I think, the current prime minister of Spain, he's a socialist, but he needs the support of very radical parties. The parties for the independence, the left-wing radical parties. So he's kind of he's dependent from these parties, and this is part of his agenda. He does whatever he wants to do to survive. What is said very often also here in the news is that if he leaves office, he might go into prison.
Oh, really?
So there are so I think this is one of the main reasons why the behavior of Spain has been like that. So in other words, if you would have another party, Partido Popular, which has been always the alternative in Spain, like Portugal, we have two parties always changing. If Partido Popular becomes the prime minister from this party, they will definitely change also on this agenda. So I think it's very much the current prime minister. And again, I think he's in the hands of those very radical parties, and this is the reason why he has this kind of agenda.
I'm actually one of the persons. I have always a list of issues on which I compare countries if they are good or bad. But Portugal is in favor of Ukraine, is in favor of regime change of Iran, has recognized Kosovo. Spain doesn't have recognized Kosovo, and I criticize Spain so much for that. But thanks a lot, Portugal, you have recognized it. You are in the Euro, you are in OECD, you are in Schengen, you are in NATO since the beginning. You are simply perfect. Yeah? There's nothing for me to criticize in Portugal. But one thing I want to ask you about economics, and here your taxation system. Because in the last 20 years, many reform-oriented countries in Eastern Europe, they have cut the taxes towards flat tax. For example, Bulgaria, the best example, which also a very poor reforming country, but it has developed very well in the last 20 years because they have adopted 10% income tax and corporate tax. And also Romania, a similar situation, and everybody in Eastern Europe from all the 13 countries which joined the European Union in the last 20 years, they have, or 20 and 2 years, and they have basically a system between, let's say, maximum 20% of taxes, some of them maybe 22, and that's basically acceptable. And the income tax and corporate tax is about 15. So let me ask you, because Portugal was always seen as the poorest Western European countries in Europe, and it has actually developed relatively well, but it has not these enormous growth rates which you normally need to overtake Spain or to overtake France, which are very problematic countries under very problematic leadership. So my question is, you as the Liberal Party from Portugal, are you having some proposals like to cut taxes and to turn Portugal into this tiger economy which you need to be in order to build the prosperity which the Portuguese people deserve?
Definitely. I think you mentioned it. One of the big issues, well, we have something which is positive. So the amount of debt has decreased. And this, I think there was a learning process. Even the Socialist Party, Antonio Costa, made it that kind of, the debt went down. That was positive. The down part or the negative part of that, no reform was done. There was a lot of savings done on the health system, which is very bad right now. So that was the negative part. But the reality in the last 20 years, the growth of Portugal has been extremely, not a lot at all. So 1 point something. So, and the governments have been trying, to support people, give a little bit of money there, some support there. That's not necessary. That's not enough. That doesn't, the level of living of the Portuguese has not increased as we would expect, as it is possible to happen. So Iniciativa Liberal Defense definitely, less taxes, less bureaucracy. We have a lot of bureaucracy. Sometimes, very often the state asks, well, you need to pick up another declaration on the other department of the state. That doesn't make any sense. If the state has the information in the first place, it should be the state to deliver directly this document. It's a good example for that. If you build a house, the amount of money, effort, sacrifice, licenses and taxes you need to pay. It's so part of the reason why the prices of real estate are high is also part of it is also responsibility of the state. So the state makes life difficult for companies, definitely. We could attract much more companies if we would have, more attractive tax system, like Ireland has done. They managed to decrease taxes, attract so many companies, and
Yes.
and the salaries increased dramatically. So it could be possible. So
Ireland is also a very peripheral economy, and they are far away, so it's not exactly so easy for them. And they have managed to be very, very successful with low taxes. I don't know what is the tax level of Portugal, but don't you think it would be in your prosperity league much more better to have something like 10% flat tax for income and for corporate taxes?
It would be definitely. Here in Porto, by law, the city halls are allowed part of the income tax, like 5%. They can not use that 5% and give it back to the people of the city. In Porto, we, Iniciativa Liberal, but together with the Social Democrat Party, which is the mayor. Well, anyhow, we put that was one of the battles we have done. So right now we kind of, from those 5%, we only pay 1.5% of income tax. That's something we put in our political program, and we managed to deal that and agree, and that's something positive. So whenever we are in power, we try to do that, and we manage, and we have done that here in the city of Porto. And one of the expectations definitely is, if next future social democrat party is possible to govern together in a majority with Iniciativa Liberal. So that's always our expectation. If that happens one day, definitely, we will require for that decrease in bureaucracy and taxes. So that will be, that will be negotiated, of course, like everything is negotiated. But that's one of the main priorities for Iniciativa Liberal, in the best interest of the Portuguese population that deserve to have, a more relief bank account at the end of the month.
Exactly, especially now when you have this big flooding, it would be much better to have lower taxes for the people to recover faster and also to build better lives back after this disaster.
Definitely.
Thomas, I want to thank you very much for this very good interview, and I want to wish you all and your political party all the best to win a lot of votes in order to kick out the communists out of the Portuguese parliament, and also to keep up the good policy to cut taxes and to be a very good ally for Ukraine and also for the Iranians, and to success of Portugal to turn yourself from an authoritarian state into very successful pro-Western country is, of course, a role model for many countries to come in Eastern Europe. Thanks a lot for joining, and maybe some concluding remark. What is the perspective from Portugal in the fight for freedom?
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Gunter. It was a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I think, the fight for freedom, I think one statement I would make is, we live in democracies in Portugal, in Austria, in most European countries, but democracy is not taken for granted. So you need to fight every day for maintain your democratic system. So this means dictatorship does not come from one day to another. So every day you need to control your governments, to control who's governing us, to avoid that. The risk is always there, I would say. So, and this is something that everyone living in a democracy should pay attention to, definitely. And that would be probably my final remark.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. I want to show
Thank
you a
you.
closing because I love Portugal and the sun. I don't know if you see it very much, but we have heavy snowfalls here in Vienna at
Oh,
the moment. Yeah. So what comes down as water in the case of Portugal comes as heavy snow now in Vienna. And I wish you, of course, a very good recovery from this terrible flooding. And I think spring will come and we will win the war in Ukraine. We will also defeat the tyrants of Tehran, and we will also integrate the Balkans and Ukraine in NATO and the EU. And the Portuguese success is always a sign and a symbol and a kind of light tower of what is possible to transform countries from authoritarian poverty into a very successful member of NATO and the EU and the Euro. Thanks a lot for this very nice conversation. All the best to you, Thomas. All the best to the Portuguese. And let's stay in touch for freedom.
Thank you very much, Gunther. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Have
You're
a good day.
welcome. I will now stop here. Very good. Yeah, that was very nice. And I like it very much. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Thank you
We
for
were
having me.
we were
Gunther.
live on YouTube. I will put it now on YouTube as a podcast as well, and you can share it as well. And I will put it on the other platforms as well in the coming days. And
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you so much, Gunther. Thank you for having me.
Continue your fight for freedom. All the best
Okay.
to
All
Portugal.
the best.